Welcome to the Two Pages Project, part of the Coil Entertainment Network. I'm your host, Rob Steele. If you are interested in getting your story on this show, send it to us. All the details are coming right after this story. And in this week's story, again, not directly taken from today's headlines, but it wouldn't surprise you. Lieutenant Cooper Wright investigates the death of an abused homosexual teenager in a story that could have been prevented if someone had spoken up. This story is called Me Too. I'll be the first to admit that I don't understand all the pressures a kid goes through these days. When I was growing up, things were different. We didn't have 5 billion channels of TV with nothing on. We had 3. Not billion, just 3. We didn't have MP3 players, we had AM radios. LPs weren't exactly portable, and if you don't know what an LP is, go Google it. We played outside, for crying out loud. Today, inside, on a computer, texting your friends next door. I don't get that. We did have prejudices, though. Some kids were made fun of because of we didn't call it sexual preferences back then. Some even got beaten because of it. I don't understand most of that. I had a friend I was reasonably sure was gay, but I wasn't sleeping with him, so it didn't matter. I may have teased him about it, but I didn't mean anything by it. So I'm rather proud of this whole Me Too movement. The premise, as I understand it, is that if someone gets sexually harassed, they report it. Immediately. It doesn't matter who did it, or where, or when even. Just report it so it can be handled. People are reporting by the truckload, and that's great. But I have a feeling that many more aren't reporting it. This case, I suspect, should have been part of the movement. The victim is 19-year-old Michael Devon, a college student studying finance. Doesn't live in a dorm, stays at home with mom and dad, which makes sense. Saves a lot of money that way. Unfortunately, his parents found him this morning, hung in his closet. There are a lot of extenuating circumstances going on here. Is suicide a possibility? Certainly, but he's also beaten and bruised. I'm also curious about the marks on his left arm. I don't know what makes markings like that. I pointed out to our coroner, Dr. Song-Ho Young, and he just shrugs. Well, Cooper, I have no idea what could make marks like that. I'll take a closer look when we get to autopsy. He makes a note in his pad and gets Henry Ruth to help him take the body back to HQ. CSIs have already been over the scene and collected, hopefully, pertinent evidence. His laptop, some school notes, the rope. Dr. Andrea Strong of the Sympathy Squad, a nickname for department psychologists who do initial consultations with victims' families and take some of the awkwardness away from detectives so we can focus on the case and not melting relatives, has been here for a while and tells me that the parents are ready to be questioned. That sounded a bit harsh. Not interrogated, certainly, but we do have some questions to ask.
No, Lieutenant,
answers Margaret Devon, our victim's mother.
We don't know of any trouble. He...
She broke down into sobs again. That's understandable. Michael was their only child. I left her in the care of Dr. Strong and went looking for Dad. His father, Hank, a long-distance truck driver, was outside. It appeared as though he was unloading the cab of his truck angrily. Climbing into the cab, a few thunking sounds, followed by him jumping down and throwing a satchel or a box into the garage of his house, then repeating the process. The truck, The cab section of a tractor-trailer, or semi, looked a little out of place backed up to the garage of a suburban house. Never understood why they were called semis either. I was brought up in a house where my dad did a lot of math, so semi meant half. And if this was just half the truck, how big is the whole thing? They're huge as it is. But I digress. Mr. Devon stopped his furious unpacking long enough to give me a dangerous look. Okay, Lieutenant, I know I'm supposed to be upset over my son's death, and I am. But I'll deal with it in my own way. You don't have to keep watching me like that. He picked up a box and headed back into the garage. Sir, I have a few questions. Look, he said, rounding on me with a fury. You're a detective, right? So go detect. You figure it out. That's your job. He turned again and stormed into the house, slamming the door. That's what I was doing, you know. Detecting. Most of it has to do with asking questions. I didn't know Michael Devon, so I have to ask people. That usually means starting with the grieving parents. I know it has to be a hard thing to do, but police just can't magically make information appear out of thin air. It would be great if people realized that. Of course, it would be great if people didn't have to be investigated either. Just be good to everyone, and there we go. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. While the death of Michael Devon looked like a suicide, there were issues that made it appear otherwise. Homicide investigates suicides anyway, but this one looks more like a homicide than suicide to me. Something that was almost immediately, but partially, confirmed when I get back to my car. There was the usual police activity surrounding the house. A few squad cars, the coroner's van was already gone, and my car. On the far side of my car, someone was, lurking? It was a young man about Michael's age. I suspect one of his friends. You're Lieutenant, Wright, right? I nodded. Yeah, and the reason you're looking by my car is... I hear a slam from behind me and turn. Hank Devon is throwing things around his garage again. I hope Dr. Strong can take care of him, too. I turn back to see the young man getting into my car. Okay, what the hell are you doing? He stared straight ahead, almost boring a hole through the dash. I need to talk to you, sir. But not here, not with them around, he said, nodding toward the Devon house. To prevent an incident, I just get in the car and ask where we're going. Anywhere but here. I started the car and began to drive back to HQ. I was halfway there before the kid spoke again. My name is Julian Croft, sir. I grew up with Michael. Okay, so you guys were friends then? Lovers. Okay, I wasn't quite expecting that. It still throws me off a bit when I learn someone has a different view than I do. I shrug it off. If that's what they wanted, then good for them. Julian could tell I wasn't expecting the revelation, but he continued. We've been that way most of our lives. We were going to get married after college, but it hasn't been easy. Well, not for Michael. My family were more accepting. The Devons, well, you saw the bruises. That threw me off even more. You mean his dad did that? My ire was rising. Few things piss me off more than parents beating the kids. Yes, sir. I overheard Mr. Devon say that he wanted to put Michael back in the closet one time. Sir, I can't prove it, but I think they killed him too. It just doesn't make sense. Michael was so happy. Well, when he was away from home. And he didn't stay there often. He would stay with me and my family a lot. He looked as though he would explode with tears, but held himself together. I know you would only have my word to go on, but please look into his family on this. I just can't believe Michael would commit suicide. Maybe the kid was onto something. Maybe not. I could at least clear up one mystery. Maybe even two. Do you know anything about some of the markings we found on his arm? Or Why we're being followed by a red VW Golf? Julian smiled a little at that. The Golf is my mom. I told her I had to talk to you, and she didn't want me using money to catch a cab or an Uber home. But those marks were probably his braces. He broke his arm a few years ago, and it hasn't been the same since. It was a spiral fracture. Spiral fractures are usually a sign of abuse. Looking back at Hank Devon throwing things around like he did makes more sense now. I pulled the car over and let him switch to his mom's vehicle and tell him that I will be looking into it. I have to cover all the angles, but he's really given me a lot to look for. I thank him and give him my card. If you think of anything else or see anything, you let me know. He nods and thanks me. Polite kid. You don't see too many of those anymore. I watch him get into his mom's car and drive off before I continue. She stops next to my car briefly and mouths a thank you with a nod. By the time I get to the coroner's office, I'm not in a good mood. I'm never really in a good mood when I'm working a case. This is homicide I'm dealing with. But if Julian Croft is right, and it is the parents that did this... Boy, it's a good thing I'm done here, Coop, Doc Young says as I enter the autopsy theater. You're not dressed for it. He's right. I always suit up when I come in here. Last time I didn't, Doc was cutting somebody open and got some lovely patterned blood spatter on my suit. I've gotten so flustered thinking about the Devons, I didn't even think about changing. What have you got? I ask a bit more harshly than I intended. I think you already know. That mark on his arm is from a brace from a spiral fracture. Doc nods. There's more. These bruises are fresh. I know you don't want to look, but his testicles are almost crushed too. Someone did a number on this kid. And I think I know who. Henry found some splinters in his arm, and we traced it back to a baseball bat that the CSIs collected. A wooden bat, but a new rubber handle. Great for fingerprints, and they match Hank Devon. He has a record of assault and battery in 3 states. And Coop, it wasn't suicide either. The damage to his arm would mean he couldn't tie the knot. We can't prove it yet, but... Coop? Coop! I didn't hear the rest. I'm too furious right now. How could a parent do that to a child? To their child? Being straight or gay, or both, doesn't matter. It's your kid. You have to take care of your kids. Before I realize it, I'm in my car, speeding through the parking garage. I'm bringing in Hank Devon. That's all that matters to me right now. I'm just bringing him in. As I try to leave the garage, I almost run over Manny. Detective Vasquez nearly jumps on my car. I stop, roll down the window, and ask Manny, what the hell are you doing? Manny sighs as he dismounts the hood and comes to my window. I know you, boss. Song Ho called, and all he had to tell me was that he thinks that you think the dad did it. I didn't need to know anymore. I knew you would get a full head of steam and do something that may jeopardize your career. You don't need to do that, boss. We'll get him. He picked up a radio and called for 2 units to pick up Hank Devon. Manny's right. I need to take several deep breaths to calm myself down. Doesn't help. I spend the next hour at the shooting range. Every paper target has Hank Devon's face on it. Every single one. I'm not one for getting my gun off. It's a handy tool in my line of work. But I'm supposed to use my brain. That's the most important tool a police officer has. I keep thinking about the Me Too movement. It wasn't sexual abuse that Michael Devon was receiving. It was straight up beatings. But it was sexually motivated. I think that should count too. And I can't help but think that if he had reported it to anyone, this could have been prevented. Now Mrs. Devon's life is ruined. Hank's life is ruined. Not that I'll be shedding a tear for the bastard. Julian Croft's life is ruined. And Michael's life is over. There needs to be a better way. I just wish we could find it before this happens again. If you'd like to get your story on the show, just send it to us. Check out the website, 2pagesproject.com. That's the number 2. Pages Project uses letters. And there you'll find all the rules and all the information on how we'll take your short story and publish it first as an ebook on the website, then turn it into an audiobook on the podcast. And when we've got enough stories, we'll turn it all into an actual book that you can buy at a store. So if you'd like to submit your story, check out the website and then email it to contact@twopagesproject.com. We'll be open to any type of story you want to send us, not just mystery or horror, but sci-fi or historical or western or melodrama or romance if you feel the urge. Whatever you want to send us, just submit your story for the audiobook treatment and publishing on our website. Don't forget to pass the show around, too, because that always helps, and subscribe to the show and all of the Coil Entertainment Network shows through iTunes or Pinterest or YouTube or the Google Play Store or anywhere you happen to find podcasts. While you're at it, check out the Coil Entertainment Network store. There's a link on the website. We've got t-shirts and hats that all go to support the network, so check that out. And if you're interested in your show's cover art becoming a shirt or a hat, let me know. I can arrange that. Also, if you're interested in being part of the audiobook process, use that same email address, contact@twopagesproject.com. So, until next time, be safe and keep writing.